Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Monaco.
And I'm Bobby Salvesen. We are the Hazmat Guys, bringing you knowledge and insight to make your job a little bit easier and safer.
Let's take a minute to hear about today's sponsors.
Hey, have you heard about the Decon Field Guide?
Oh, yeah. The First Line Technologies, the DFG, has everything that I'm looking for in the field of emerging threats.
Yeah, the DFG has a brand new look with updated time-saving resources such as instructional videos, guidance documents, dwell timings, FAQs, even a ton more than that.
You're preaching to the choir, man. I've already been using the guide documents and the instructional videos on a bunch of classes that we're teaching throughout the country.
Yeah, so simply download the Decon Field Guide app to your smartphone or tablet to access the full threat library, step-by-step instructions, and instructional videos. Download the Decon Field Guide app today. You can find it on the Apple App Store or Google Play.
Let's get to the show.
Hey, welcome to another delightful episode of the Hazmat Guys podcast, episode 244. I kind of like the title. I don't want to say it yet, but because you guys are going to laugh at it. But I'm here with Mike Monaco.
Now I'm interested in the title because you haven't told me yet.
All right. So first, I'll tell you the title in a second. First, I'll introduce our today's interview guest. It is John Cassidy of great fame, Benevolence. Hi, John.
Hello, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
All right, so the title of this, and I'll let John introduce himself. The title I put is, Can Cryogenic Tanks Fly?
When pigs fly.
So we brought John on to help explain, excuse me, something that happened recently, locally. And John, why don't you tell him a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, probably the most challenging part of my job is I get to supervise you two.
You know, if that weren't so true, it would be hurtful.
Yes.
So, but I am a lieutenant in Hazmat Company 1. So I supervise 7 firefighters on the primary response, hazmat response apparatus for New York City Fire Department. And I do get to work with the famous hazmat guys on a regular basis. And I am very lucky. And we had a very interesting call the other day that the boys wanted to bring to the podcast so we could kick it around because it
blew your top off.
At a minimum.
I was not there, so I'm going to play the part of the student, we'll say.
I was not there either.
Oh, I thought you were.
No, I found out about this. Tear down the fourth wall here. Bob's on vacation, so he hasn't been in the firehouse in quite some time. I heard about this run when I came into work, and they were showing me pictures of it, and I was like, holy crap. That's beyond insane.
All right. So, John, you were there, though, right?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of very interesting things. And a call came in for reports of an explosion. And the initial units were dispatched, and Hazmat came in a little bit later on into the incident because we had a report of an oxygen cylinder exploding. So that's certainly concerning. And
it is. And let me ask, what was running through your mind responding? Because I got to be honest with you, like if I was sitting in the back and I heard oxygen tank exploded, one of the first things I would have gone was, we're getting bad information because oxygen tanks just don't explode. So that would have been, I would have walked in there already thinking, I'm not going on an oxygen cylinder that's exploded. It has to be something else.
Well, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking more along the lines that we probably had a fire with cylinders involved, and that will happen on occasion. That we have cylinders involved in fire, and when the guys are doing overhaul, the cylinder might fail. And that was my initial That was my initial thought process. And until I got a little bit more information, um, that it was a 4L cylinder on a fish truck. Now, this definitely needs a little bit of unpacking, because I think this is not necessarily something that you see in every market in the United States.
No, no. Well, first, what is a 4L?
So the 4L is the cryogenic liquefied oxygen cylinder, as opposed to the compressed gas cylinder. So we're using liquefied oxygen, cryogenic. So that wasn't my initial thought process. I was thinking we were probably having um uh
Like a big high pressure cylinder.
yeah, that's what I thought we were going to have, because actually um we had one explode in an ambulance fire a number of years ago that we talk about in our technician class. So that's what, based on experience, what I was thinking. I wasn't exactly expecting um, a liquefied compressed gas cylinder or cryogenic cylinder, because they're generally lower pressure than the high pressure compressed gas cylinders.
Now, just to put that into context, we're not talking about like a doer or something like that. We're referring to very similar. The 4Ls are very similar to the style tanks that we're going to see with our CO dispersion at many restaurants, 7-Elevens, fast food places, right? That's the type of cylinder that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes we get a little bit off the rails when we use the term doer. A doer is a generic term for all cryogenic containers. So a 4L can be a doer, but it all doers are not 4L cylinders. But Mike is correct. The big shiny compressed gas cylinders, the liquefied compressed gas cylinders that we're seeing all over the place at 7-Elevens or Wawas, or any place where they're doing a lot of soda business, you'll see these 4L cylinders.
Okay, and just to clarify, just so everybody's still on the same track, cryogenic tanks, minus 130F, and the major hazard of these things is not flammability or anything. It's basically asphyxiation, right? I mean, they are known for extreme expansion ratios, and actually, while I was sitting here thinking of this question, I'm struggling to think of one cryo tank that has a flammable in it. I don't think they really do.
Hydrogen.
Cryogenic hydrogen. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll give you that
And I
one.
know it exists because the university that I went to had a giant hydrogen CO liquefied hydrogen just outside the physics department.
Oh, that's a good idea, man. They should
Right.
put it right next to like the dorms.
Yes. Next to a blimp making facility.
Yes. All right. So another thing, I think you need to explain this a little bit. Is you said it was on the back of a fish truck. Explain that.
Right. So this is fairly unique. So for fresh fish deliveries, they will cram as many fish as they can into these 250 to 275 gallon totes that they fill up with fresh fish and whatever the variety of water, whether it's fresh water or salt water, whatever the fish requires. But they pack them in so tight that they'll very quickly consume the oxygen in that container and they'll die. And that's not a good thing when you're trying to do fresh
No.
fish delivery. So, and you could have 6 to 8 of these on the back of a flatbed truck. And what they actually do is they erect a bar going over the back of the truck, and they actually will hook up a liquid oxygen cylinder, and they'll pipe it into the bar, and they'll have little oxygen flow meters like you have on your bedside at your hospital bed, and they will just bubble in oxygen into these totes to keep the fish alive. So, you know, and I remember when I first started, I'm like, why is there just one cylinder on the back of that truck? Because it doesn't look like a cylinder delivery truck. It's got these blue totes on the back. And later on we would learn that this is how they this is how they keep the fish alive. So it's a unique thing. So if you've never seen it, it's very interesting.
Okay. So what happened? I mean, you this thing quote unquote exploded,
Yeah.
and
So
you guys were not. It happened before you got there, right?
yeah. So it happened. It happened prior to our arrival, but when we got there, one of the things is we're doing our site, our site survey, our hazard assessment, and even if you have catastrophic failures of cylinders, when you have liquefied compressed gases, very often they can auto refrigerate, and you could still have product in the back of a split open container. So we were concerned about having extra liquid oxygen and how that played out. Now, most of these 4Ls, with the exception of that hydrogen cylinder, have atmospheric gases: nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen. You can have helium in there as well. So liquid oxygen, there are a couple hazards. Of course, we have the frostbite hazard, the cryogenic hazard, but we also have, if the liquid oxygen leaks on substances, certainly it can make things behave badly. So it can turn asphalt shock sensitive. So there's a number of safety considerations that we need to be concerned of. And when
Hmm.
we showed up, it was a very, very impressive site. Literally, the top of the cylinder where the valves are is gone, non-existent. It's not even there. And then the way this cylinder is constructed, it's kind of constructed like a thermos. There's an inner chamber where the liquid oxygen will live, and of course it's very, very cold. And it was about 90 degrees that day. So with a boiling point below minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit and an ambient temperature of 90 degrees, this thing is just absorbing heat. And there's an outer wall, and they draw a vacuum, and that's a very, very good insulator, having a vacuum between the two chambers. So the outer shell is basically split open like a banana, and the 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 cab of the truck was blown out. The roof of the truck was blown up. The windshield was blown out. The cylinder was actually driven 3 feet through the bed of the truck. It displaced the transmission, and the transmission of the truck was down on the ground. There was an incredible amount of power when this released.
Oh my god.
So now, remember how we were talking about um, with cryogenics having these very, very low boiling points. We know that when we add heat to the system, that we increase its pressure. So these cylinders will always be building pressure, no matter how good the insulator is. And the way they're designed is they're supposed to have a spring-loaded pressure relief device, much like our LPG cylinders, that when the pressure builds up, it releases. And then when the pressure comes back down from the release, it should reset. So obviously something went on that didn't work um, for us. But um,
Well, did they have were they was there any reports of the cylinder hissing and leaking tremendously before the explosion, or was it just normal and then went boom?
Well, we didn't get very good reports because there weren't too many people around to tell us what happened. We would later find
They were
out.
all dead.
We would later find out from reviewing the security camera video that there was actually a guy that 20 seconds prior to the detonation of this cylinder um, was in the cab of the truck, and then he actually went underneath the truck, and he was working on the truck when it went off. But um, the he was gone by the time that we had arrived. And because of the nature of this type of incident, we also had the police departments, bomb squad, we had the fire marshals, we had arson investigation, arson explosion investigation. So there was a lot of, it was a multi-agency um, incident. And of course,
Wow.
you can't rule out foul play at this point. It's too early. It's too early to tell. We don't really have a cause for this yet. So at this particular facility, which is a big giant garage, and they had um, a total of 4 of these trucks, and with similar configurations. So the hazmat entry team and myself, we went and we inspected the remaining trucks, and we would find another cylinder which caused us to have concern. Remember how I told you this spring-loaded pressure relief device? It usually comes off the pressure gauge, the cylinder tank pressure gauge. Well, we found another one that was hissing a little bit. It had a small leak. And when we went to investigate the leak, we found where the pressure relief devices were supposed to be teed off that pressure gauge.
Mm-hmm.
They had been removed, and in the place of the spring-loaded pressure relief device, they had barb connectors where you would slide a hose on, much like that Christmas tree on the end of your oxygen flow meter, except these were brass. And what somebody did is those barb connectors, they took a vice grip and crimped them closed, so they were relatively gas tight. So basically, what was done on this second cylinder is they defeated the pressure relief device. There
Wow.
is no pressure relief device. So
Wow.
what,
That is incredibly stupid on 2 levels. One, you're taking away the safety of the thing, and then why would you go through all that? Why not just get a plug? Why put a barb fitting in there and then squeeze it down? That just seems retarded.
Yeah, so nobody was around to really tell us why they did that. But we did have an immediate safety concern, because some pressure relief devices we think are there for like impingement of fire, and like really catastrophic events. But 90 degrees atmospheric is basically like putting the heat into this cylinder. So like right now, this cylinder is building pressure, and we're standing next to it on the bed of the truck. So we easily could have had another one come apart. So we immediately started to vent oxygen to atmosphere to allow make sure that we did not have continual pressure buildup in this cylinder.
Well,
So
so what was the pressure within the cylinder? Was the pressure exceeding?
the problem is you could tell if you're modifying. You could tell if you have a organization that is modifying tanks improperly. The actual cylinder pressure gauge was unreadable as well. So standing next to that tank, we had no clue what the internal tank pressure was.
Wow.
So it was one of those, yeah, let's start venting. And now once we start venting, the internal tank pressure will go down. And eventually, because this was an improper cylinder, it was eventually taken outside, and its contents were completely evacuated so that it would render safe.
How did
Because
Interesting.
how did you guys end up doing that? Did you go through the vent? Did you go through the liquid? What did you have to turn on and manipulate within that cylinder to be able to get it to empty out as quick as possible?
so just the initial vent, we just opened the vent valve up, because when you if you want to vent to drop pressure, you want to vent from the vent valve. Just like when we're flaring propane, if we want to decrease the pressure, we're going to flare from the gas side of the cylinder or the larger vessel. And if we're evacuating for if venting for evacuation, then we could vent liquid. But if you initially want to drop the pressure, you're going to want to open up the vent side.
Okay.
And once we now know that there's a safe pressure, we could open up the liquid side as well. But you have to be very careful with the liquid side because you have a cryogenic liquid, and structural gear offers you no protection. So, as you guys are aware, we do have the cryogenic gloves, but if you position yourself away from the discharge point, you can open the valve with regular structural gloves. You just want to make sure you don't come in contact with any of the liquid.
See, like I'm very leery because you got certain valves that are, let's say marked well, right? A good quality shop does a good job on their stuff. But I usually think of like, I don't know, these clowns. I don't know what to even say. These guys that really they don't mark this stuff right, and now it's going almost like cut the red wire. But I'm colorblind, and I can't see which one to actually cut or turn. You turn the wrong one, and you block off exhalation, all that the pressure relief properties of that tank, and you might have a bigger problem. Right. So I mean, I'm more in the thing of all right, let's back it up a little bit. Let's watch the gauges, but call in the contractor who is truly a professional in doing this.
Yeah. So, well, we do have a little bit, experience in the company, and there's certain when you deal with these cylinders often enough, you'll notice some common characteristics. So these did have labeled valves, and even if I wasn't concerned, if I wasn't sure whether it was opening up a liquid valve or a gas valve, I'm going to open the valves very slowly to see what comes out. And then we were comfortable doing that. Now, remember, we had an immediate concern because the pressure relief devices were defeated. Normally what happens with these cylinders, they're going to vent to atmosphere on their own on a fairly regular basis. As the pressure builds up, the spring-loaded pressure relief device is going to release. Now, New York, sea level, it's very humid, so when these do release, very often they're going to produce a vapor cloud because the gas coming out of the pressure relief device is it's very cold. And sometimes we're going to get a phone call because some concerned citizen hears the hiss and sees a vapor cloud, and they think something's wrong. And you guys know we've been to so many of these where by the time the fire department shows up,
Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. We checked the gauges, and the cylinder was functioning correctly. But this one was one of those times where, because we had defeated pressure relief devices, it wasn't really practical to wait to have an outside contractor come in to assist us. But certainly we also have references on the book on the rig, namely the compressed gas handbook that helps us with things like the layout of the 4L cylinder, and it's also available electronically through resources like Airgas Ace. So when we're doing tech research, we can, if we are in doubt too, we can utilize our databases and our phone a friends to help give us an idea if this was a cylinder that really didn't seem if it was foreign to us.
That's interesting.
That is absolutely crazy. Now, I was talking with one of the guys that had entry on that run, and he was saying he did a significant amount of research after the run was over and complete, and those tanks are actually structurally designed to fail in the manner that that tank failed, in which there's a disc of sorts at the top, and it actually will, when it overpressurizes, it blows into the tank, causing the structural failure to occur at the top, so that all of the pressure and contents is focused upwards instead of waiting for an unknown fail point somewhere in the tank, and then the blast goes outward, towards something. And I found that to be a very interesting little fact. I was not able to confirm it, but if this guy says that he did the research and that's what he came across, I'm inclined to to be okay with it. Did you guys come across anything like that?
Well, the theoretical basis for that, um, so the remember how we talked about it's a two-layer vessel with a vacuum between the layers. So there is a frangible disc, which is not part of the valve assembly and it's not part of the normal operations. So if there was a vacuum between the two chambers and that frangible disc had failed, as long as there was vacuum in there, then it would suck in first. And also how it's welded, the it's a cylinder, and then it's welded on the top to hold the top of
The valving.
the valving of the outer chamber. So how it's put together will fail certainly as well. And it's very interesting. That vacuum is critical. It's actually critical to the operations of this insulating properties. One of the reasons why these cylinders will fail is if there's damage, like mechanical damage to the outer shell. If it punctures it and it releases the vacuum, then there's no insulating properties, and the pressure will skyrocket rather quickly. However, the normal pressure relief device should handle that. So if you have a properly operating pressure relief device, and even if you put a hole in the outer jacket, the vacuum would fail, it would heat up very quickly, and that spring-loaded pressure relief device would just keep going on and off until the contents were essentially exhausted. So now, my theory on why this failed in the way that it did is I suspect that they modified this cylinder as well as the one that we found with removing the pressure relief devices. The valves were gone. We actually put ladders up on a number of different buildings looking for parts of this cylinder, and they're gone.
Nothing.
Nothing. So short of putting up a drone to go search, it could be in somebody's backyard. It could be in a tree someplace. But we could not find the valves. But seeing how the second cylinder that we evacuated was modified, I would say I'm fairly comfortable calling this improper modification of a pressure relief device.
Amazing what's out there.
That's
Right.
good
So
stuff.
right. So you think this is one type of call, and then through your hazard assessment and your tech research, you have to be prepared to go in another direction.
Yeah.
So always be aware when you're approaching these cryogenic tanks that a failure in for whatever reason, whether it's meant to be or not meant to be, that pressure relief device can create literally an explosion that would within clearly a few feet kill you.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right.
A big woof.
Listen, we use these so commonly, and even when we think when we're not dealing with we're not dealing with a toxic material. It's the pressure alone that's a hazard, right? firefighters routinely and hazmat techs routinely walk around with a cylinder with 4,500 or 5,500 pounds per square inch on their back, right? And if that cylinder fails the wrong way, the pressure alone is a hazard. So we really should not be complacent anytime we have a cylinder incident. And we should utilize our tools, our uphill, our upwind, our using our binoculars for our, part of our hazard assessment, and then approach, with air monitoring equipment cautiously until we can get a better understanding about what's going on.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, listen, if we loved having you on, and we're hoping to have you on a little bit more, but if you out there in listener land don't know about what he just did a, from what I understand, an excellent case study on a chlorine release in Syria that you can find on the university. Is very popular, going like hotcakes.
Really is.
It really is, and he's got a whole line of more coming.
And I will tell you, it is a prime example. His case study is why you always have to think, because sometimes doing the right thing will get you killed.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at The Hazmat Guys, and take a moment to call our comment hotline at 843-628-1484.
And we are always looking forward to your feedback about information or interesting incidents that you were a part of, so send us a note at feedback@thehazmatguys.com.
Remember, guys, don't just get on the job, get into the job.